Right, so I made a video the other day about how Kenny is not really getting much done as far as getting Alberta, more of a fair deal and whatnot. And like I kind of said, even if he does get something done, I still don't think it would be nearly as beneficial as if Alberta just left Canada. Now, the problem with that kind of stuff is it's easier said than done, and for not because it should be, but because the feds would fight tooth and nail. the media would portray the media would be completely biased against it. So that's kind of why it would be harder said than done. But I seen this story the other day, so I thought I'd make a video about it, and it's titled, basically, Alberta, more Albertans want to leave Canada than Quebecers, and I believe the numbers, 31% of Albertans and 26% of Quebecers. So the one thing I would point out too is that and the media, like I say, the public schools, colleges, all that kind of stuff is giving people a biased view, obviously, towards keeping Alberta in Canada. So I don't see how anyone could argue this other than the far left crazies, that if Alberta was to, the polls are a little more biased. My guess is that if a fair, fair polls, everything being equal was done, that the numbers would probably be about two thirds, one third. And I think it would fall basically on the lines of people who are on the left and people who are more on the right. I think that some people, and the one thing, caveat being, is that I think there would be a small percentage of people on the right that wouldn't support it, but that's more or less because they're not really actually conservatives or whatever you want to call it. But the main point being that I wanted to point out is that things have gotten so bad out there that Albertans want to leave more than Quebec, and Quebec has always had this strong nationalist movement. Now, I'm not really an expert on Quebec and why they want to leave and all that kind of stuff. To me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because if they left, they'd be out a lot of money. They'd be out, I think it's 10 or 12 billion dollars that they're getting directly from Alberta, and they seem to think that they're kind of nuance issues that, like I say, I haven't done a whole lot of research into it, but to me there's nothing that's being done to Quebec that would offset 10 or 12 billion dollars a year. Like there's no way it can be that bad there. Alberta is losing 28, I think it's 28 billion dollars a year from, no, it's 22. They're getting 28, but they're losing 22 billion dollars a year by equalization. Not only that, there's the regulations that are killing our energy sector, all that kind of stuff. Like Alberta's losing $22 billion a year, and 100,000, 200,000 jobs. Like there's no way Quebec has it nearly and like anywhere close to that. Or what this is, that's like literally maybe 10% is as bad in Quebec as it is in Alberta. So yeah, the main point being is that, like I say, like I made the video before, like things aren't going to get any better. So for all the Albertans that are, holding their tongue, and maybe I think there's a lot of people on the fence on this kind of issue. They want Alberta to stay in Canada, but that's with the caveat that we can maybe get more of a fair deal when it comes to equalization and all these regulations and the carbon tax that it's killing our industry. But that's not going to happen. And the one problem I would point out is a lot of people, when they're discussing this kind of stuff, they come off as a little too brash, and I don't know, at least the way the people that are more on the fence see it, a little too out there. So the way I would go about it is just point out the numbers. Like just point out the numbers. There's no way someone can look at you with a straight face, with an honest, unbiased, opinion, and look at you and tell you that Alberta's losing $22 billion a year from equalization, even though we're struggling more than any other province. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers when it comes to the unemployment rate and, all that kind of stuff, but I think it'd be pretty hard to argue there's a province struggling more than Alberta right now, and yet we don't get any help with equalization. We have a premier who's trying to get more of a better deal for us, and the feds are refusing it. So basically, the situation being is that, let's say you have a friend who always needs help with doing, renovations, and maybe you're helping his kids, you're doing yard work, all that kind of stuff. He always wants help, and you're always helping him all the time. And then one day you never ask for help. You never ask for help for years, like decades even. And then one day you ask him, "Hey, can you come help me with something? I just need a little bit of help, just this one time, maybe another time, but And then he says, well, no, I can't do that. It's not fair. Like, that's the situation that the best way of putting it with Alberta and Canada is that Alberta's constantly put way more into Canada than we've gotten, way more. We're literally talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. And, this one time we need help, and the federal government's giving us the middle finger and double middle fingers for that matter. So if that's the way someone treats you, why in the world would you want to associate with them? Like, for all you people that still want to stick in Canada, assuming we can't get things changed at a federal level, that's the one caveat I would throw in. But like I say, that's I would bet a lot of money that doesn't happen. I would say that's probably 10 to 1 odds, plus 500, betting. So that it's not going to happen. So like I say, what's it going to take? Like, we're getting screwed over so bad. Now I think the main thing is that people just they don't want change, even if you can basically prove it's for the better. Like, yeah, like there's a lot of people, like I said, the people on the left, they're not going to do it because if Alberta left, it would be a lot more of a capitalistic free market country, I guess you'd call it, and that doesn't benefit them. People on the left, they view themselves of not being able to compete in a free market. That's why they want all the government regulations, the welfare, the carbon tax, all that kind of stuff, because it levels the playing field. If someone who's making, over six figures gets taxed at 50% and someone who's making minimum wage gets taxed at 10, well, that levels the playing field, at least in their mind. And it makes people less likely to want to earn more money because you're just going to be taxed more. So, but that's a completely different issue in and of itself. But the main point being here is that I'm not sure why people are so scared to leave. Like, what do we have to lose? The federal government's not cooperating with us. If we left, the states would cooperate with us, especially under Trump, which it's more than likely going to be another 4 years. And if that goes well, it's probably going to be another 4 to 8 years of Republican control. So to me, it makes no sense. And the other thing I point out too is that we have the last point I'll get at is that if you look at the left in Alberta, they're constantly complaining about these public sector jobs that are being lost. Now, it's a very minuscule amount compared to the private sector jobs, which just proves just how partisan and little they care, or they only care when it's them that's losing out. But they seem to complain about all these healthcare cuts and public school cuts and all this kind of stuff. And the thing I would point out is that if we left Canada, we could afford all that stuff easily, like easily. Like if we left Canada, we could almost double our current budget. Now, are you telling me that the Kenny government's cutting healthcare and public schools maybe 1-2%? Like, we could easily afford that. The smart thing to do would be, okay, well, let's take maybe 10-20% of that. Let's pay off our debts, because thanks to the NDP, we're in a lot of debt, and then we'll use the rest of that towards investing in our energy sector, which would like massively increase wages. We could have kids out of high school making 25-30 bucks an hour. Probably we could have by the time you're 25, you could own your own house and be making 80, $100,000 no problem. Nowadays, that's pretty much impossible unless you have like an engineering degree or some crazy, you're a doctor. But I mean, if you're a doctor, you got to go to school for 8 years. So yeah, like nowadays it's almost impossible. But like people don't realize just how beneficial it would be. But I think that's another video in and of itself. So I think I'll leave it there. I think I've got some points across pretty good. So if you like the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe and stay tuned for more.